Hello, welcome to Performance Anxiety. We analyse the film, television, theatre and comedy performances that everybody is talking about. I'm Alex Dale, and with me is my resident film expert,
Dr. Maren Tom.
How are you doing today?
Excellent. No more cough.
I beg your pardon?
No more coughing.
No more coughing. This is important for podcasting.
This is good for podcasting. I'm not going to be kicked out again.
From the Podcasters Guild.
Too much coughing.
On this episode, we want to talk about Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, directed by Kasi Lemmons and starring Stanley Tucci as Clive Davis and, more importantly, Naomi Ackie as Whitney Houston. Now, we watched this and we found a question in this movie. What is the question that we want to address by watching this film and talking about it?
I think the first one is, why cast Naomi Ackie? And how do you cast somebody anyway, somebody who really existed?
I think that's the big one, isn't it? Yeah. Why her in particular, but more generally, how do you cast a person who everybody already knows? So Whitney Houston, of course, hugely famous, massively influential. Everyone knows what Whitney Houston is like. How do you find a person to represent her? So this is a biopic, of course, and casting in biopics is a tricky thing, and I think part of that depends on what kind of biopic it is. How would you describe the kind of biopic that's being given to us here by Kasi Lemmons?
I think we can differentiate between maybe two directions a biopic can go. So you have the straightforward one where the events of the life are told in order, what the internet would call like a wiki biopic.
The internet calls it that, does it? The famously reliable.
It's an authority.
Okay.
So the events of the person are told chronologically in a way that we can just follow her life events or that person's life events.
And what's the alternative to that?
So the alternative could be something like I'm Not There, a kind of artistic biopic. Remember the Bob Dylan biography by Todd Haynes, just as an example for some artistic interpretation of somebody's life, where we explore what Bob Dylan means. He's played by different actors, amongst others Cate Blanchett representing Bob Dylan. So it's an artistic interpretation of the meaning of Bob Dylan, whereas the other one is more like a straightforward, you follow the historical events as if you were reading a book.
Okay. More favoured by historians, I'm led to believe. A straightforward account of the events in someone's life.
Yeah. This is what I would say if historians enjoy, as if you were put into the past and you're just enjoying it like a spectator.
All right. So that's a good, I think, overview. This is not an artistic interpretation of what Whitney Houston means in any kind of bigger political, sociological, artistic sense. It's much more an account of the events in her life, one after another.
Very interesting. So the filmic language tends to be kind of very realistic. Everything is done for verisimilitude. The costumes are of the time that the scene is taking place.
I think that gives a good sense of what the movie is like in general. One of the things that feeds into that is how it was made and the role of Whitney Houston's estate in that, and the effect that would have on the kind of film that's being made, right?
Yeah, so it was made in conjunction with or with the consultation of Whitney Houston's estate, so the people who look after her legacy. And that, of course, meant that the director had access to original recordings, raw recordings of her, which, of course, give the film a lot of authenticity. You feel as if that person is really singing, because Naomi Ackie, the actress, didn't do the singing. They actually used Whitney Houston's original recording, which of course is very understandable. She had a very unique voice.
Well, that leads us on very nicely to Naomi Ackie herself and why she was chosen and the process that the director and the production team had to go through to find her. What was that process like? And is there anything interesting in it that we can kind of draw any conclusions from more generally, do you think?
I've heard it took a very long time, over a year, to find somebody to play such a great character. And I don't think the pandemic helped, but still it was a process of watching a lot of actors screen tests.
Screen tests over and over again, okay. What is it about screen tests, do you think? What is there something in that they're looking for?
Whitney Houston was such a famous person. So how do you cast somebody who everybody knows what they looked like, what they sounded like, have an idea of how they walked and talked. We have lots of original recordings of her.
We have a sense of her personality, and we have a sense of
Exactly.
her being.
So what do you look for in an actor? What are the qualities that you then put out in a casting call? And I think they didn't know. Yeah, this is why they had to go through a lot of candidates. Because I think they might have had an idea and then they did screen tests and that didn't work out. And suddenly it becomes this whole, we need to screen test a lot of people. Till at some point it clicks. They just saw this tape of Naomi Ackie and it clicked.
So there's something ineffable in this process,
Yeah.
almost.
So we have, it's also very interesting that we have Naomi Ackie, who I didn't really have on my register before. I only think I saw her in the Star Wars movie, Rise of the Skywalker, and she plays the assumed daughter of Lando. And it wasn't a very interesting role.
Star Wars doesn't give actors particularly thankful roles.
I think she played a role in Small Axe,
Small Axe being...
the famous British television series by Steve McQueen.
Okay. Very artistic director, Steve McQueen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the other hand, so I didn't really know her. So why would they cast this almost unknown person to play this very famous person?
You think
Why?
her known quality is part of this process, maybe?
Maybe, because maybe I don't know, maybe they went through really famous names at the beginning.
So what you're telling me is through this process, the production team, the director and so on, they're looking for a quality that they might not know, but they will recognize when they see it on screen, right? There's something about the film tests that's the important thing here.
Yes. So what you have on screen is a quality, an ineffable quality that is inherent within an actor or somebody who's in front of the camera that translates to what is on screen as something bigger.
The interesting thing about Naomi Ackie is that she doesn't physically resemble Whitney Houston very much.
No, she doesn't.
So
look like.
that's clearly not a priority when it comes to finding an actor to perform a particular role. You kind of give them a wig and give them a costume and give them teeth and stuff like that. So you remove the obvious kind of inconsistencies, as it were. But there's something more important than just appearance that is needed to come across on screen to be Whitney Houston, right?
Yes. So what we enjoyed about the film was very much the performance.
Yes. And Naomi Ackie in particular, her quality, her presence, right?
Exactly. It wasn't a great film. It wasn't Citizen Kane. Honestly, there was nothing in the film that was particularly rewarding. However, what was very rewarding was watching Naomi Ackie as Whitney Houston.
I agree. And that's, I think, what made the movie for me was precisely this quality, this on-screen quality that she has. She brings something to it that's very hard to put into words. It's kind of ineffable, but this is why we're here. This is what we're trying to get to the bottom of, right?
Yes. So I think one of the most memorable was her rendition of the national anthem.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
this
the
is
Star
where you
Spangled-
see this kind of strange phenomena, this process of enjoying a performance. This is where you see it really being demonstrated very nicely. So as you would expect in a film about Whitney Houston, they have to recount the moment in which Whitney Houston sings the national anthem in 1991. I think it's in Florida, and she sings the Star Spangled Banner. Now, the interesting thing about that, I think probably the challenge for you as a performer or a production team, is that it's already a magnificent performance itself that you somehow have to tell the story of. How do you do that? What is there in that to get to grips with, other than just Whitney Houston's amazing voice? So if you watch the original, you see Whitney Houston having an absolute blast, being in total command of her vocal instrument, you know. She belts the song out magnificently. She sells it to the crowd. She loves selling it to the crowd. You can see her enjoying that relationship. It must be quite a thing to get to grips with.
It is exactly this quality that Naomi Ackie plays or provides for the audience. And that is to do with her ability, or the ability of the camera, to translate Naomi Ackie into Whitney Houston by the virtue of being filmed. So, you know, ever since Plato, we know that, let's go back.
Wow, you're really laying on something heavy now.
Yeah, you know, just get ready. But we know that the image of something is not the same as the original thing. You know, the Plato's cave and how the projections of the people outside.
The shadows on the wall are
The
not the
shadows
wall
on-
outside.
Yeah, so it's not the same thing. So, and cinema studies is basically a big chunk of it is just dedicated to the idea that the filmic process, the translation of reality onto the screen, changes what this is. Yeah, so it creates a new thing that is the on-screen version of that reality.
So the stuff in front of the camera is somehow transformed by having a camera pointed at it and being recorded, right?
Yeah, and it is this absolute weird phenomenon that we try to get to grips
Yes.
with
And
all the
this-
time.
This is film studies, is right. What is this? What is this kind of bizarre, magical, metaphysical, ineffable, you know, this hard thing to describe because it's not verbal. It's to do with appearances and essence and all of those things. It's
Yeah.
this juggling act, right?
Yeah, especially sort of in the 70s, a film philosopher called Stanley Cavell writes a lot about how the essence of something is transformed by this filmic process. So an actor is not the same. The essence of this person is radically changed by this filmic process. He gives an example of Jimmy Stewart.
Okay.
So when he plays a role, it's not just him playing the role that we see, but our own understanding of Jimmy Stewart as an actor and the other roles he's played previously.
Yes.
Maybe to bring it up to date from Cavell's example. So when we see Keanu Reeves as John Wick, we don't just see John Wick, the character. We see Keanu Reeves as Neo from The Matrix. We see Keanu Reeves as Bill and Ted.
We even see him because everyone knows he's a nice guy who's kind to strangers at airports, that kind of
Exactly.
stuff. His persona, his star persona is this.
So his star persona feeds a lot into the performance of John Wick. We know him. We don't know Naomi Aki as much. So what she brings to the role is a kind of unknowable quality.
I think this is really interesting
Yeah?
because what it means is, or at least what it means, what is being demonstrated here, I think, tell me if you agree, is even the same actor might not be the right person for the part, even if they're more successful. So there's something about a very unique moment in time where the right performer is right for.
One moment in time. Sorry, go on.
Yes, Dr. Tom there, showing why she's an academic and not a singer.
Oh, burn.
Let me repose that in a way that you can't sing about. Yeah, I want to talk to somebody who understands me. Yeah. So what it means is that there's something unique about a performer, even external to themselves, just about a moment in time and how famous or not famous they are, how familiar they are. What do they stand for as a symbol or a cipher, right?
Yes, and here we have Whitney Houston, who is already a symbol and a cipher and a star.
Yeah.
And to fulfill this with another symbol, cipher, and a star, you would get quite an artistic interpretation of
Yeah.
the movie.
This fame meets
Yeah.
this fame.
Yeah.
What happens?
Exactly. So the readings of this person for us audience becomes really complicated. But this is not this kind of film. It's supposed to be a kind of nice biography which we can project our own feelings and desires onto this character, our love for Whitney Houston.
Is it fair to say, this might be oversimplifying, we kind of want to feel like what it's like to be Whitney Houston more than, is that fair?
Well, we want to be with Whitney Houston enjoying herself. We
Be
want to
with
enjoy
Whitney Houston is
Whitney
nice.
Houston.
Okay.
And it would be made more difficult if the performance of Whitney Houston already comes with loads of baggage that we need to overcome.
It's a very strange relationship because one of the things that's inherent to a performer is what they look like when a camera points at them, which is it's relational, I guess, if you wanted to be kind of philosophical about it. So what we're talking about here are qualities related to an actor or a performer more generally that are to do with partly their persona and the degree to which, they're bringing symbolic qualities to a role. But also I think what we're talking about more on this particular episode is what happens when you point a camera at a performer and the transformation that occurs there, the process that happens and the outcome of that, and how hard that is to understand. So practitioners work with these kind of, if you're making a film, they work with all of this kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis. These rules are very hard to theorize. They're not like a rule book. They're just a kind of set of things that make things work.
So what we need to get around of thinking is that if you want to cast somebody, casting doesn't work by, oh, this person looks like that person, or that person has these immutable qualities of this person. It doesn't work like this.
It's far more subtle, and it's far more to do with the relationship between a camera and an individual, the kind of the inner being of that person somehow, right?
Yeah, so the way a person translates onto screen is not the way the person is in real life. And that is very hard to understand for people who want to cast people who are with the same life experience or who look like that person. Why don't you cast this person? He looks like them. It doesn't work like this because the way it translates onto the screen is something that is unpredictable.
It's something other entirely.
It is something other entirely. It is this quality, that phenomenological experience that only a camera can provide.
Pointing a camera at something or someone produces an effect, and that is film, and that's, you have to reckon with that as a practitioner.
Yes, and it works in the favor of creating a biopic of somebody really famous like Whitney Houston. We have a person who, at this moment in time, translates beautifully into Whitney Houston. You know, putting a camera on Naomi Ackie, you can see why she got this role, right? This is an enjoyable performance. It's not that she didn't work at it. She did work very hard at becoming.
She seems like a very diligent actor.
Yeah, and she worked really well, and she can sing very well.
Yeah.
But other actors can do that too.
Yes. What they don't have that she has is this filmable quality.
Exactly.
That is this precise moment that needs to be captured.
Yes, and we can see that on screen. As soon as the first scene with her as a young girl, the camera loves her. And it loves her because she seems to love being Whitney Houston. And this comes out in every moment we see her on screen. And especially those moments where Whitney Houston enjoyed being Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
You know, when in her edition of the Star Spangled Banner, Whitney Houston really much enjoyed being herself.
Yes.
And we enjoy, Naomi Ackie, enjoying being Whitney Houston. And that is a wonderful phenomenological experience for us as audience. And we enjoy the film because of the performance, not because the film is great.
All right. I think that is a very nice description and a very nice analysis of a particular performance and why it's working on us. If you wanted to send off your message to the world in a sentence, how would you summarize this for our listener?
I think in short, the performance that comes out of the filmic process is not the same thing as the person who stands in front of the camera. But we need this real person's ineffable qualities for it to work. And these qualities are beyond social and political categories of what this person should be like. So go and watch I Want to Dance with Somebody if you want to enjoy a good performance.
Thanks very much. You've been listening to Performance Anxiety. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and spread the word.